Hey everybody, I'm Dan Fradenburgh, and this is for the REI Rocks review, and we have a summit coming up that is just next week. It's going to start next Thursday on the 23rd of March, and I'm wearing the wrong hat. I'm rectifying that almost immediately. Jason and Angel will be joining us momentarily, I'm sure, but let's give some background on what we're reviewing today. Today we're reviewing the lawyer panel, the attorney panel that we did last time, and so the main topics there were finding out personally. I wanted to know, when I talk to different professionals, who are you supposed to talk to in which different situation? And all of this is in the context of commercial real estate. Now, one of the things, in case you've never tuned into one of these REI Rocks reviews before, the way that they work is we go through the REI Rocks Summit content. We do a little piece of the presentation for you, and that's completely for free. Normally, if you want access to this content, you have to purchase the subscription. It's very inexpensive. It's cheaper than Netflix these days. And what it does is it gives you access to all these different sessions that are specifically on the subject of real estate and entrepreneurship and how you build your business, whether it is doing the single family deals like Angel loves to do, single family deals, as well as the commercial deals. How you doing today, Angel?
I'm so sorry. It made me do like 15 steps to get logged on.
It's all good because I got an opportunity to sneakily put my proper hat on, and so now I got the right hat on. For a second, I was wearing the wrong one. But we were talking here about how the REI Rocks review works, and I was talking about the summit that's coming up, and Jason is now, or AKA Bowtie, is now another brick in the wall,
Well,
which is pretty amazing.
Background up because I don't know if y'all saw, but that's our life behind him with that big, huge pile of clothes. That is the clothes that we are currently going through because this is my kids' spring break, and we're trying to figure out what sizes fit whom. So we have not just that pile, but there's piles everywhere. We're hoping to hit the donation bins at some point this week.
Right. Well, that reminds me of our friend Brian Briscoe. He had a great way of putting it, which was just saying like, oh, you have a nanny or you have a maid or something like that because you're rich. It's like, no, it's the other way around. It's like the time that you save by having somebody take care of those household chores, like you can use that and invest that into your business so that you can, do even more. So
on that note, we weren't able to have our person to come help clean this week because it's spring break and all of my kids are at home. So I can't imagine what it would be like for a company trying to clean a house when there's 6 people in it.
Yeah, you can't just stack people on top of each other for a few hours. It's funny how that works. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the law, but we are reviewing this legal session here. I was saying to the audience that there's a good chance we won't be able to do the 1.5 times speed on this one. We might have to reduce it to 1.25. But Angel, do you want to introduce what we're up to here on these reviews?
Absolutely. So basically what we do on these reviews is we are helping you learn how to take the important pieces out of presentations. And I was actually just talking to Julianne Peterson about this. Our hope is that you learn with us on these Fridays how to pull the important info out, and then you take that with you to meetups. You take that with you to face-to-face events, to conferences, so that you aren't going in there to those events and thinking, oh my God, I have to remember everything, because you don't. You need to pull the important parts that are applicable to your life at that moment, because you're probably going to get the recordings. Now, on a meetup, probably not. But on a conference, you're probably going to get the recordings, and you'll be able to go back and look at that information, because at different points in your journey, different pieces are going to be important. But we just want to help you pull and figure out what's important today so that you can figure out what you need to be doing when you go to events, and you're able to pull from that as you're going and not freaking out thinking you got to remember everything.
I love that way of putting it. And me, like I've got a lot of marketing experience, a marketing background, all that kind of stuff. And it's, of all the industries I've found, it's probably the one where you've got this weird part with conferences, which is it's really reminding you of principles that you already knew. And so like sometimes, you know, the right time, right place is very important. But this this panel here, this is the one with all the attorneys. And what I was looking for, if I'm really honest, is I was trying to find out is like, what do you actually get from law school? Because I'm sure I don't need to be an attorney personally. I know you guys don't need to be attorneys either, but you'd like to at least be able to tell, is this attorney a good one or a mediocre one or below average, and what exactly would an attorney do to protect their investments and things like that. And I think it's really quite the presentation. So do we have anything else we want to add before we get started?
I don't think so. Other than, did you talk about how we're probably not going to get through it? I think you did.
Yeah, I mentioned that it's going to be a teaser. We're going to, I'm sorry, but, it's unfortunately, we have to pay for our electricity and for the food for our children and stuff like that. So we can't just keep on giving away all the summit content for free. So we're just going to cut it off 45 minutes in. So, but I'm sure it's plenty of stuff for people to bring out of it. So
they want the full access. It's $17 a month for the VIP subscription, and it is 100 bazillion% worth it.
Absolutely. Here's the graphic there. Yeah, of course, they don't believe everything you see on the internet is not 250 plus hours. It's like, it's over 300 now, I believe. And but the price is right. If you want to scan that QR code or go to that URL, that is all hunky dory. But the more important thing is to go to theacademypresents.com, because that's how you can get your free level access, your free tier access to the summit that's starting next week. And after you sign up for the free access, it offers you that same VIP subscription so you can ask your questions live from wonderful speakers like we have today. We got Lauren Cadillac from Dallas. We got Ethan Gao from Houston. We got Paul and Adam Vincent, and they're from Ohio. And those are all very, very hot real estate markets. So let's get started, because you guys don't want to listen to me flap my gums all day. Let's rock and roll. All right. Beautiful. All right. Welcome, everybody. Let me switch over so you can see my PowerPoint up here. It's a little bit thrown together, but the stuff that's on there is it's not that too pivotal. So thank you very much for joining today. I call this the When Tinfoil Hats Won't Help. I was reminded by a clinical psychologist this week that that's supposed to be for stopping people from reading your mind. So it's not the best comparison, I'd say, saying tinfoil hats. But really what I wanted to get at is, some people think that I'm somewhat of a nervous Nancy when it comes to compliance and things like that. So that's why I like to have that as a little way to frame these. But let's get started. I'm going to introduce each of my guests individually based on their questions. I guess I'll mention their names first. We've got Lauren Cadillac from DFW. We got Ethan Gao from Houston. We have Paul Vincent from Ohio and his brother from Ohio. And then we got Douglas Dowell as well, who's in Colorado, if my recollection serves. Have I got that right there, Douglas?
I'm actually in Kansas City still, Colorado, hopefully soon.
Okay, that's what it is. So we're not there yet. So the first question I want to talk about, and the main thing that I have to emphasize is this is for commercial investors to understand where all these attorneys fit into your business. And you're going to run into a few questions where, at least I found, it's like, who do you even talk to? Because one hand doesn't seem to know what the other hand's doing. So first, Lauren, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago that I thought was fantastic, because when I moved my business to Canada, Kim Jong-un was lobbing missiles into the Sea of Japan. So I left Taiwan, and I got a tax attorney, and I got a CPA. And then I ran into the situation where the tax attorney said, oh, you got to talk to the CPA. And then the CPA said, oh, you got to talk to the attorney. And then I wanted to pull my hair out. And I think that's something to do with living in Canada more than other places. But Lauren, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself first, but that's my first real question is when you have an attorney, like whose responsibility is what? Who should you be talking to?
Okay. Hi, Dan. Well, thank you. I am Lauren Cadillac, and I am an attorney in Dallas, Texas. I'm a JD MBA LLM, which means that I went to law school. I studied taxes. I am a property tax expert in the state of Texas, and I am very interested in taxation and really just avoiding giving the government money where possible. So to answer your question, Dan, that has nothing to do with Canada. Actually, I kind of giggled when you said that, because that happens all the time. I tell my clients all the time, ask the CPA. I don't know. For me, if it has to do with math, you have to ask someone else. I made a decision going into law school. I said, I'm either going to continue to do math or I'm going to be a lawyer. And so I decided to be a lawyer, and I do not do math, so to speak. So if you want an actual dollar and cents what is the repercussion of my action? I am not your girl. I'm going to tell you, here's the general idea. Here's how screwed you could be. But I think in that discussion, what we really talked about is like the big difference between an attorney and a CPA. So we both know the law, right? We both know the code, and that's about all we have in common. So attorneys, at least most of the attorneys I know, we became attorneys because, well, at least for me, I like to follow the rules without following the rules, right? Like I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And so I like to go find the mays as opposed to the shalls, and, play in what I call the area of gray, right? In the very fuzzy area. A lot of that is because I know I work in the legal system. I understand how it operates. I know my limitations. I know the expenses that will come with pushing the limits and the boundaries. My experience with CPAs is gray is not a color in their palette. Okay. So while I am literally living in gray and hanging out in gray, and that's where I like to be, they either want to be a black or white. It's going to be the black letter of the law or not. They're not going to be able to take into account like, okay, well, this idea has not been adjudicated. So if I want to test myself, if I want to really push this boundary, I can, and then I can go make the arguments, and then maybe I'll win. It's a 50% chance. They don't. I guess for me, I see lawyers as we're a little more like gambling, so to speak, in that we just we know the system usually well enough that we know where we can play. And the CPAs, they don't play. I've never heard a CPA laugh. I've never heard a CPA crack a joke. Never once in my life have I ever heard a CPA use humor. And so keep that in mind when you're trying to, when you're going to find a CPA, and the advice they give you, and their advice is this. And then you go to a lawyer, and the lawyer's like, well, we can play this, and we can dance, and we can do these things. That is because we have different training. And that is because, lawyers have better sense of humor than CPAs. Sorry, Don, but I stand behind that. So that's what you're going to find. You need both of us. You have to have both of us because somebody's got to do your math, and somebody needs to know how to do that math according to the law. It's us, the lawyers, that get to play the fun games and then tell the CPA, nah, we're gonna play it this way, and we'll see how it ends up turning out.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And the reason why I wanted to get you to chime in there, because I think that is what is really uniquely a you thing, as opposed to the other attorneys that I have right here. And I apologize for all the messing around with trying to get lots of screens showing all at the same time here. But my next question is for Ethan, and it's called butt coaching. And I think this definitely applies to all of you. Now, Paul and Adam, they have a teaching platform on deal structures, and so that is part of their businesses. But in general, like if you're already an attorney, becoming a coach seems a little bit ridiculous to me. And I find it's kind of difficult to find the coaches where they take that into account. Ethan, you and I have discussed this a little bit. I don't know what, maybe the most effective way actually is to introduce yourself, just to say that it's not a point of pride. It's a matter of like, it just doesn't make sense to become a coach in some situations. So what are your thoughts?
Dan, if I could become a coach, I would just do that because you make money risk-free and you don't have to do anything. But I'm not that good looking, and I'm not that good of a coach, so it seems like I can't get it.
Stick around me. It's people get better looking just hanging out. It's like osmosis.
I definitely got better looking since I met you.
Right, exactly. She's guilty as charged. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, so my background comes from big law. So I went to Cornell and then Columbia Law School. I worked at a big...
Hey, Jason, you think that's true of you too? Have you got better looking since you've known me?
Oh, definitely. Angel, is that true?
Sure.
Have I gotten better looking?
Awesome.
I mean, you've gotten a little more
position.
feisty. Like before, you didn't talk very much.
Fair enough.
My confidence from being better looking.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize they go hand in hand like that. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. Oh man.
And primarily leveraged buyouts of publicly traded companies. My last corporate job was in Houston. I worked at a big law firm, big offices nationwide and national. They did a ton of what's it called? MLP, master limited partnership, IPOs and financings and things like that. I think my billing rate was $1,200 an hour by the time I left. And I'm decently good looking and decent lawyer, but I'm not worth $1,200 an hour.
Well, it's I don't even know how to react every time I hear that though. So, but the next thing I want to do, and I'm trying.
The most important thing is clients paid it, and they paid it on time.
It really is. It's like that's part of the negotiation thing. I always am looking at what's the marketing aspect of all this, because I see it rearing its ugly head everywhere. But let's move on to a combination of Paul and Douglas, and of course Lauren and Ethan. Lauren, you mentioned that you've done a lot of school, so you definitely can weigh in on this one as well. And the slide says, but licenses. What about licenses? So Paul, you've got your license, but you work more on your own deals. To my knowledge, Douglas, you've already said it's like, all right, I'm not going to do any of this licensing stuff, ever again, at least when it comes to the attorney side. And then me personally, oh yeah, I see Angels popping in the chat and mentioned, hey, aren't those the TikTok lawyers? Paul and Adam are in fact the TikTok lawyers. But Personally, my only license is a driver's license. I didn't go to law school, anything like that. So just talking about licenses and keeping in mind that this is for commercial real estate investors, making it a little bit weird, I can point out as well. Like it crossed my mind, it's like, well, if I wasn't actually looking to practice law, but I wanted to know all the stuff that you guys know, so I could like pick a good attorney and all that kind of stuff, and just know when I'm going to be getting myself in trouble. You know, like it crossed my mind, like, hey, does it make sense to go to the cheapest law school out there, so at least I know it? Actually, Paul, I think I asked you that about like 2 years ago. But Paul, what do you think about licenses as it relates to commercial real estate investment syndication and whatnot? Is it worth it? Is it something like? What are your thoughts?
Are you talking about being like a broker dealer license, like to raise money, or what do you mean?
You bring up a great point. I was thinking about law degrees and a license to practice law, but you know, it's entirely possible that broker dealer licenses, you know, they make way more sense. But just what are your take about, you know, like what do you say to the people who are like, nah, screw that, I'm not going to get any licenses whatsoever, and what are the pros and cons for that?
Well, you don't want to do anything that requires a license without having that license. So, you know, a lot of people will go on the internet and see that you can, you know, buy a $200 template for a private placement memorandum, and then they fill it out and do the best they can on that. So that would be the unlicensed practice.
So like just that idea right there, okay, like that terrifies me. Like the idea of somebody trying to just DIY their PPM, it's like, oh my goodness. So what do you guys have to say? What's your experience?
Okay, so what I would just say about the PPM is like that is like the centerpiece of how everything works. It lines out how you're going to be doing everything. And if you're trying to do that on your own, the chances for inconsistency are pretty high. I think that even, and I don't mean this as a slight to any lawyers, but lawyers have done so many PPMs that I think sometimes they will use previously used PPMs and change up names and stuff. And sometimes things get missed. So if your lawyer has the tendency to kind of miss things sometimes, what on earth makes you think that you're going to do it perfectly? And it's just too scary. It's too scary to not have it perfect.
Exactly. And I think we can throw in another part, which is a little bit of a hot take, which is when you take coaching on commercial real estate deals and all that kind of stuff, it always sounds like you're getting, you know, like the secret stuff that only these guys know, nobody else does, or anything like that. But once you talk to experienced sponsors and syndicators, they're like, but all of that's in the PPM. You know, if it's not in the PPM, then it doesn't matter. You know, so I think that that's a really pivotal thing to understand. It's, you know, it's written in English. And it says like, well, what if this happens? Well, it should be in there. And if it's not in the PPM, then it's a bad PPM. You know, like what happens if this person stops paying? What happens if this person, steals money? You know, it should be there in black and white. And
the PPM also lines out for you like how to get in touch with other investors on the deal. And if it doesn't have it in there, you can absolutely reach out to the SEC to get that information. So I think that there's plenty of times when things are going a little wonky and you're like, am I the only person in this deal that feels this way? And so it can be really helpful to get the names and contact information for other investors, just so you don't feel alone. Not because you want to do anything or be deceitful or destructive, but just because you don't want to feel alone. So I would just, that's the one thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about, is that you can absolutely get contact information for the other investors in the deal, per the methods listed out in the PPM or through the SEC if they're not listed out.
Exactly. So that's just to fence that in a little bit. What we're talking about is if you were told one thing was going to happen in the deal, and then the reality turns out to be completely different, there is a way to basically fight back, get some sort of recourse. But the PPM is going to dictate a lot of the terms on when you can actually make those sorts of moves. Let's continue.
Sub-law, UPL, that happens, I'm sure, all the time, all over the place. You'll see it a lot with commercial real estate brokers. They're often editing purchase and sale agreements for their clients and trying to find, trying to get value back. Their intention is value by saving clients money, but it's an unlicensed practice of law that doesn't usually get anybody in trouble, but it's something you shouldn't do. So generally speaking, overall, get a license if you need to do. Don't practice law without a license. Don't raise money without a license. And that's where I'm at on that one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Douglas, you want to take that away? I got some more questions for Paul following up on that, but what's your take, Douglas?
Yeah, I agree. And what I really love about this is I'm in a position to say my intention was to be in real estate, and that drove me actually into the hey man, there's so much law in real estate. I'm gonna go ahead and get a law degree while I'm at it. Wholly unnecessary. Now I will say, if you really gotta and you really just want to go there, there's a 1-year master's degree that's out there that is the first year of law school that you could do. But wholly, completely unnecessary, because at the end of the day, real estate is a people business, and as an entrepreneur, you were better off being surrounded by Ethan and focus on sales than trying to be Ethan. And I'll tell you, that's a difficult thing to do, as I've tried to be Ethan and I failed miserably at it. So I really, at the end of the day, don't do that. If really you want to be a real estate entrepreneur, that's an absolute failed path, because I walked it.
I have something to add. When you get a license, you basically consent to the government being able to do whatever they want. And I'm talking about in the United States. Okay. I'm not talking about Canada, Dan, because I don't know Canadian, but here in the US, I basically, when I got my law license, I basically gave the government permission to just jerk me around. And we saw with COVID, doctors who didn't, who were not supporting vaccines, they got their licenses pulled or shut down. So now, being much older than I was when I became a lawyer and got my law license, and having a broader understanding of that, I would say if you can avoid licensure, do so. Because it is not fun. Our government is not good. Our government does not like you. And acquiescing to them is not a smart idea. So anywhere where you can keep your own power and not give it up to the government, I would highly recommend that.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. So coming back, I really like what Paul had to say, and of course, like me being not an attorney, not practicing law, not giving legal advice, blah 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 blah. The topic that keeps on coming up in my syndicator circles is talking about capital raising, which is supposed to be done by licensed broker dealers, but you can file for an exemption from the SEC, and there are different things like that. Now, none of you are securities attorneys, but where that's like all you do. But several of you are doing. Okay, so we're having some stream problems. Securities work day in and day out. So when it comes to that, there is definitely a way to do it. But I guess the only thing I can say is everything I've heard is just don't use the term capital raiser, because it's a smoking gun that somebody is not really playing it straight, as far as they want to be on a GP team, but they don't want to do any work, and they're trying to negotiate in return for raising capital from other people. And that's what the SEC just does not want to happen. So the thing that seems weird to me about that particular thing, and this is just speculation on my part, is it seems like there is no real clear way with the SEC where you get the license and you can just be your own issuer and not have to file an exemption, because it sounds like Wall Street has all the broker dealers all buttoned up. Is that too much of a hot potato for anybody to want to comment on, or shall we move on?
I'll just hop in about getting your license. I can't remember what the numbers are that now, it allows for you to be an accredited investor as well. Series 7 or, whatever the hell they are.
Yep.
I think, and I'm only bringing this up for anyone that's just getting into the space that thinks that there are these unicorn humans out there that'll just raise money for your deals. I've had a lot of deals delayed or failed because someone who said they knew someone or happens to live within the city limits of New York City, they tell people they're a capital raiser, and in fact, they have no real ability to raise capital. So if someone comes to you and is like, hey, I'll be the capital raiser for you, and you don't know them, just expect that they're full of crap and they're not gonna be able to do it. So that is one thing to kind of be mindful of. And the other is, your value on deals is what skills you can actually bring. So if you're a person with a network, let's say you've been in sales your whole life, or maybe you've been a commercial broker, for most of your professional life, and now you're thinking about owning something yourself. That person probably has a background that could lend itself to some raising of capital. But this is a long rambled mess of being a capital raiser itself. If someone pitches you that, it's probably not a real thing. So
anything else to add before we move to the next step?
Okay, so here's the other piece of that too. We all, as people in this space, know what a co-GP is, but there is actually no such thing as a co-GP.
Mm-hmm.
There is GP members and there's LP members. Do people come into deals where their primary role or their maybe a 51% role is raising capital? Absolutely. But they also have another active role on the GP team. So they are GP team members. So I think it's just I don't even know what you would call it, just kind of like lingo in the space. But you're probably not going to find any legal backing for a co-GP because there's really no such thing. So just kind of putting that out there.
Right. And it's really tough when you're talking to securities attorneys, getting the straight story on what exactly is going on here. And I think one of the bigger ones is that I imagine once upon a time, there were some capital raisers who didn't perform. And then the other GPs wanted to get that person off the team because they didn't contribute. And then the SEC, they had to make a call and say, it's like, all right, so do we say tough beans, you know, like that's the way the cookie crumbles, you're just stuck with it, or do we do something about it? And the answer has been, we say, it's like, no, like a deal's a deal. You have to decide before you make it. And then, you know, that's how it pans out. And, but I think the unspoken part, the bigger one, is that if not enough capital is raised when you take over a building, then that's going to mean that the tenants are going to have to pay more rent just to keep it afloat. And so that's a net bad thing for residents. And I think that's why they have things set up the way that they do. So like I'm, you know, maybe I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I think that I think that this theory holds water as far as why they have it set up this way. But let's see what the attorneys say.
Absolutely.
No, not here.
Body language says no. We haven't got your brother Adam in here yet, though. So hopefully we'll get his camera on, and I'll find something to bug him about next. So my next slide here is about boundaries. What's included? If you are getting into commercial real estate, maybe you are like me. You know, you didn't get the opportunity to hang out with attorneys very often. But I think one of the things that comes up is I have it listed as boundaries. What's included? What's okay? What's not okay? And of course, everybody, you know, you want to get every opportunity you can to get paid when it's appropriate. And it's just kind of tough to really put your finger down on what's included, what's not included. And I think that there's a huge range of people. Some people, they'll just have no boundaries whatsoever and assume that they can call you all the time. And then, hey, what's this invoice for? Right? Which is just completely out there. And then there are people like me where I'm so afraid of the invoice that, you know, maybe I ask a little bit less than I ought to, but, you know, most of it is like, I end up just grabbing the statutes and trying to understand what that means. So who wants to?
Yeah, I'm not really satisfied with how that was, you know, presented. And what I'm trying to ask here is, when you're working with an attorney, what are you going to get billed for, and what actually is on the house? Because you, like, once you start paying attorneys, you've got to have this question going through your mind. And like, if you're paying for the PPM and the Form D filing, then basically everything should be included. You know, like any questions you have. Jason?
I was just gonna say, when it comes to legal questions, I don't really think about how much they're gonna charge me, because I think having the answer or the question answered is more valuable than what they're gonna charge me in the long run. But if the lawyer's worth their weight in salt, then they definitely should include a lot of Q&A in their services for what they're giving me. So.
Yeah. But now I will say this part too, is we have a point of contact on our team. It is not me. I am very wordy and I love to talk. And so on our stuff, Jason pretty much is the point of contact there, because he's more succinct, he's more concise, and you do get charged by the hour. So.
But also, they prefer a single point of contact so that they know who to charge when they get bombarded with questions all over the place. It's harder for them. And I think you're more likely to get charged more for that than if it was just a single point.
There you go. Good stuff.
Talk about like when you get, I guess we'll talk about like a syndication, you know, like the filing papers for the exemption, you know, anything like that. Like you should be able to have some sort of calls, or at least there should be some, you know, like exploratory conversation after like a deposit's made or something like that. But who's cool? Like Paul, I know I can pick on you because I know you told me before. It's like, yeah, attorneys suck at billing. It's like, yeah, I get it. I totally get it. But like, what's too much? What's too little? What can somebody expect where you're not going to be pissing off every attorney out there saying, it's like, why are you saying that part's free? Or,
yeah, no, I mean, every firm's going to be a little different. We know we're part of a lot of closings of transactions where bank's counsel on one deal is, you know, $6,000, and then on the next one with very similar loan products and work involved for lawyers, you know, it's $28,000. So it just totally depends on the firm. Many people will bill by the minute, and you should expect that. And I think using that as a rule of thumb of every time I talk to a lawyer, it's going to be expensive, is okay, even if you don't get billed for it, because it'll make your questions and your time with that lawyer more intentional, and you'll get the answers you actually want. So I guess that's all I would say. I'm not a fan of billing. That is my least favorite part of the profession, but just use it as a rule of thumb. If I'm going to call a lawyer, they're going to make me pay for it. So if you don't think it's worth calling for, do yourself and them a favor and don't make the call.
Right. So it sounds to me like be prepared, you know, do your legwork, sit there and say, like, okay, I'm about to call my attorney and ask them about this. What is there that I could research myself so that at least I know the context of what I'm asking or some likely things before, just because, you know, like maybe you're slammed or something like that. who else wants to chime in on these boundaries for your relationship with your attorney?
I have a different one. I'm going to invert it a little bit. A boundary you should maintain, and I think it's harder for newer people. Sometimes a lawyer will kill your deal, and maybe not intentionally or not. Sometimes it can be an ego thing where they're in. I think it's like most of the time it's just, hey, I'm really trying to show I'm fighting for you. So I think it's not necessarily intentional, but they'll really make a fight over a particular issue. But at the end of the day, it is your deal, and you have to protect your deal. And if they're infringing upon trying to kill a deal, it can happen where they'll try to kill it when you shouldn't allow that. So maintaining the boundary between, okay, you're pointing out the risk, and I'm the one who bears the risk. So that's the one important thing that I think you should take in mind when you're working with counsel, understanding, okay, you're the ultimate end of the day. Your skin is in the game. You have to live with this deal, and so just keep that in mind. I think generally most attorneys are pretty good at it, but occasionally you will get an ego trip that's going on where they're just trying to, that it can go too far. So just keep that in mind when you're dealing with counsel.
Yeah, Doug, I can build on that too. I personally, I review tons of deals, and I have two sets of information that I provide people. Okay. One set is, this is the law and this is the risk.
Right.
The other set is, I'm a real human being too, and I understand that humans got to take risks. So, this is unacceptable to a lawyer. But also, you can make the decision. Here's what you need to here's what you need to balance. I never make decisions for my clients. I'm not making your decisions for you. I'm not telling you how to live your life. It's hard enough for me to do that in my own, okay? On my own life. So I'm just going to tell you, here are the consequences, right? And then you get to decide. But I have seen, Doug, what you're talking about. In fact, when I worked at AT&T, we would have lawyers get on the phone, they would kill my deal. And I'm like, we were arguing over a word. They would kill my deal over a singular word. And it would just, it drove me insane. And so hopefully when you're finding lawyers, you find the kind of lawyer that is a realist, that understands, like, yes, the black letter of the law is one thing, right? This is like what I was talking about earlier, the gray, right? Law is not, or life is not black and white. Life is not this. And I know a lot of lawyers lose sight of that. So hopefully when you're looking for one, you find an attorney, you find someone who understands that, to Doug's point, is not going to kill your deal. Is going to here, you can do the deal, but here's what here's how I feel about it. Here's this, here's that.
I love that, because I was actually going to bug you next, because I knew you'd be able to handle this this next part, which is Douglas was actually telling me, and I didn't know this. I've had a bunch of friends. I've been fortunate enough to be friends with a few physicians, so I know how their licensing works, and I know that if they screw up, getting a doctor, a physician for malpractice is extremely difficult. It's not likely to actually happen. But Douglas was saying that as a licensed attorney, there are defenses which you must be aware of and you must use, or else you can get in very deep trouble. So Lauren, I was thinking maybe you could think of one pivotal case where in some situations, if you didn't quote that case, then you might be at risk of losing your license. The judges would say it's like, you're a Yahoo, you didn't work hard enough. What are you even doing? Does that?
Yeah, I remember this question was answered in the negative, and most what it seems to be, it has more to do with civil procedure. Apparently, civil procedure is the big course in law school that first year, prospective attorneys, they drop like flies. It's the really tough one, because it's basically when can you make an objection, which objections are available and that sort of stuff. So it was misrepresented a little, but I just wanted to mention real quick that we are not going to be watching this entire presentation. And it's not just because if you add up, let's see here. So we got Ethan at $1,200 an hour. You got Lauren Cadillac. It's like you add all these together. This is a lot of money worth of time that we're sharing here. And that's why I'm being a little bit of a Scrooge with this. But when we are watching this, I think the most important thing for everybody to understand is that the summit is coming up next week. And that is how you get access to these sorts of answers. And if you go to theacademypresents.com right now, that's a great way to do it. But if you want more free stuff, if you like free, I think they should show up on Marvelous Mondays. Do you want to talk about Marvelous Mondays a little bit there, Angel?
I certainly can. So the Marvelous Mondays is a great and awesome, amazing meetup. There's anywhere from 25 to 40 other like-minded investors there. And we just have a lot of fun. We're super laid back. We're not going to shoot you down if you have questions. We're not going to make you feel ridiculous. We're going to help answer your questions and just make you feel at home, because we are a family and we just want you to be a part of what we're doing.
I love it. I love it. And I guess there's another thing to mention, since the summit is coming up. The window is closing to sponsor the summit and have your ads or message prominently displayed on the spring 2023 summit. But we also offer more than that for sponsors. So I'm just reminding you that this space could be yours. If you want to get in touch, you can get your face or your ad in front of all the people who join our summits. It's a great thing that we do each time. So we're going to be signing off in another 10 minutes, but let's continue this. And don't forget, all of you in the audience, make sure you comment or ask questions, and we'll get back to you and let you know any details that you're looking to find out. Let's rock and roll.
Absolutely.
Really, Dan, nothing in this world is that harsh except brain
Okay.
surgery. Okay, we're attorneys. We are not brain surgeons, right? So we get it wrong all the time, and judges get it wrong all the time too, because they're also human beings, right? We're all putting our pants on one leg at a time here, folks. So I've had.
I should add one other thing too about attorneys, which is that Lauren is a litigation attorney, which means she will appear in court for you. And some attorneys really hate doing that, and they won't. Okay, so I think it's important to, like, if you think that there's going to be a court case, that's one of the questions I think you should be asking your attorneys to vet them. It's like, are you actually going to be willing to go to court, or are you going to settle, 99.99999 times out of 100, or basically outsource the in-court part? So,
I've had judges literally make up laws. I look like an idiot because I don't know the law that the judge just made up in front of me. Like, oh, how did I not know the imaginary law? So luckily, there's nothing that, like, I'm going to lose my license if I don't do this or anything. Almost, there's very little in my world that cannot be, like, undone. If I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. Thank God. And that's why this is a semi-decent career, right? I'm not doing brain surgery. Nobody dies. Usually we can back it. But then again, really, it also depends. Are you doing litigation? Are you doing a negotiation? That kind of thing, right? Because when you're hiring an attorney for litigation, you're hiring them to know how the judge operates and how to write to that judge and how to argue to that judge and how to not make that judge mad and da-da-da-da-da. It's very different if you're hiring an attorney to negotiate a contract for you, right? Then you're looking for them to not kill your deal, but give you good advice and keep you protected and so on and so forth. And so, those are things to think about, but I can't say that there's any nail in the coffin, thank God, law, Dan, that I could think of. That would be really even more burdensome in terms of my legal duties to my clients. So thankfully.
Mm-hmm. And the killing the deal part, it's just over something that's just a little bit too risky to actually, like, allow to happen. They're just like, and that's the part that you need to balance as a syndicator. When you're getting this advice, you need to go, it's like, okay, well, how likely is this circumstance going to be? Like, how likely is it that somebody's just going to, move to the Philippines or something, for example, and just you can't get a hold of them. That's, I think, what really that's all about.
Not off the top of my head. I don't know. Ethan, you're in Texas too. Is there one that you can think of that's, like, off with your head? I can't.
No, I don't think those exist.
Okay, so there you go. So then, Ethan, I did want to turn around to you next, and I know that all of you will probably be able to chime in on this, which is getting paid for knowledge. Now that YouTube is a thing, it's pretty tough. That anything that can be said out of a face or thought of in a brain, there it is. It's basically for free, and of course, vetting your sources. That's got to be a lot of the art and science about it. But Ethan, you already mentioned that you've been billed out before for $1,200 an hour. My questions are, where do you draw the line? What sort of stuff is there where it's just like, yeah, until you're getting paid, then just you shouldn't say that, or like, how do you protect your knowledge? What comes to your mind, Ethan? I know that you don't even have to worry about it that much right now.
Yeah. So number one, everything you read on the internet is true. So that's first of all, very important point.
Yes, I knew about the Yeti, Bigfoot. Yes,
all of it, even if it's conflicting, it's all true. So that's number one. And number two, I just screen clients real fast. I mean, there's certain clients that when they call, it's just obvious they don't want to pay you at all. So I just tell them, hey, just go Google it or just read this, right? And then I try to end it pretty quick. And then there's clients that actually, do value knowledge and do value expertise, and those are the better clients. And then I think I heard some lawyers say that their least favorite part of the job is building clients. My favorite part of the job is building clients. I love building clients before they even get knowledge from me.
There you go.
I like building too, Ethan. That's how my kids eat.
Yeah, your kids love it when you build.
Children that aren't starving, so that's really wonderful for me.
Love it. Anybody else on now that YouTube is a thing? Okay, then getting cut out of deals is the next question. Being I think that if you're going to be really, really nasty about it, I think that being needed tomorrow seems to be way more important than being needed yesterday or last month, the year before, anything like that. So we're getting really into commercial real estate here. What gets you kicked out of deals? How can you avoid it? Who has some input on that one? So I know that there are a few different situations you'd be involved in a deal in the first place. Like, one is if you actually get the property under contract yourself, how is it that, teams will get around you? And then other ones would be like, if you're involved as boots on the ground, it's like, obviously you have to show professionalism and responsibility and all that. But who has some thoughts about avoiding getting cut out of deals when you're involved?
Generally, anything real estate you want to have in writing, but pretty much anything generally should be in writing at this point, in my opinion. That's how you avoid most of these kind of problems. If you have it in writing, you have something to work with. Where if it's just a conversation, when it gets down to it, especially with real estate, it's almost impossible once it gets down to it in terms of like a verbal kind of conversation to make that have any legal force at the end of the day. And real estate is very, very tough. So generally, have everything in writing. Trust but verify. And that's what I say in that. Just if it's not in writing, it didn't happen, basically.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great place to hold it off there. Quite frankly, there's so much. The way that I like to think about it with these attorneys and them setting up your contracts, your PPMs and whatnot, I think it's very similar to going to like a custom shop for your vehicle. Like if you wanted to get it souped up or something like that, there's always things where unless you're doing it day in and day out, it's just not going to occur to you to include this or think of that. And I think that's really great. But I'm going to get out of this tab right here, and I'm going to go to the academypresents.com just so that everybody's seen. That is where the sign up is. This is how you get access to the summit that's coming up. And I got, some nice little story there, but just put in your name here, say a little bit about yourself, and then you can get access to the free content. That's starting next week. You get that access to it. But let's do the doggy bag then. What are the takeaways? Angel, Jason, who wants to go first?
I can go first. I think the big takeaways are that you want to make sure you've got somebody that is taking care of the legal side of things, and you don't try and wing it and do it yourself. And like what Doug said there at the end, make sure everything's in writing. Everything's in write it, sign it, date it. Like yes, there are such things as verbal contracts, but they're not as easily upheld as something that's physically written down. You've got it in front of you. So make sure you have a good legal team and make sure it's in writing.
I love it. I love it. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. And I thought it was funny that they contradicted everything I just mentioned last time. I said, it's like, yeah, I just asked the lawyer. They're like, no, don't ask the lawyer. Google it first. It's like, you need to ask the lawyer because it's specific to your deal. You can't Google anything specific to your deal. So, but
right.
Find a lawyer you like and stick with them and treat them well, and they'll treat you well.
Yeah, I love it. I love it too. I guess that creativity is thinking outside of the box. Like that's one bit, but the other one is just plain old due diligence. I was actually just talking today to a pilot who flew Marine One. He's flown a couple of presidents, and one of the things that he was pointing out is even presidents are people. And so same with attorneys. So you just basically have to build in a little bit of room for that sort of thing. And that's really, really exciting. I really hope to see everybody at the summit next week, starting next Thursday, the 23rd. I personally have grown so much just from consuming this different content. And that's even though I was in a mastermind that's specifically about commercial syndication for a year and a half. There's still amazing things. Angel, what else do you have to mention about the summit before we get going?
I would just say that, yes, there is an amazing free tier. There is so much information there, but we would really love to have you on the live side. You're going to need that VIP subscription upgrade, and you're going to get so much content with that. I didn't learn everything I know from reading a ton of books and listening to a bunch of podcasts. I got it from having the one-on-one interviews that you're going to get access to when you get that VIP subscription. So I would do the subscription because you get to the live stuff all for free as long as you're subscribed. And so it's a huge, amazing, just priceless kind of a subscription.
And I got a trick question, and I know you'll know the answer, which is like, would you say that the subscription, the VIP access, all of that different content, do you think it's for beginners, intermediate, or advanced people?
Well, there's really a little bit for everybody. Maybe not super, super advanced people, but people that are within like 6 months of where we're at. Because the event has kind of grown with us. So clearly at the beginning, we were beginners. We hadn't done a bunch of deals. We had our residential experience, but we didn't have a bunch of commercial experience. And as we progressed and we've become owner operators ourselves, the content of the summit has also progressed with us. So there's going to be stuff there for beginners. There's going to be stuff there for people that are in that intermediate range. And there's probably some stuff there for advanced people as well. I don't think of myself as an advanced owner operator yet. So I don't know if, I don't know. I don't know if what I'm understanding, what I'm hearing is what other people are going to be hearing and understanding as well. So, but in my mind, there's a little bit of something for everybody.
Oh, there definitely is. That was definitely the trick of it, because it's not just for beginners. It's not just for intermediate people. And I think the reason why that is because the people who we have on, they're not full-time coaches. And that has a very specific meaning in my head, like what constitutes a coach. Because, I was working for a coach for 6 years, and I was working with their, like their affiliates, the other coaches that they would promote their programs and stuff like that. And the thing that I find is really, really consistently showing up in coaching programs is they have to create a curriculum that makes it sound like, there's lots of mysteries about this industry. And there are, but at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, well, I think they try and overemphasize some parts. Like we were just saying earlier, the PPM has the details on what will happen if something goes wrong. And the other thing, I always love to quote Greg Scully out in Tennessee for this one, which is that all of that general information, it all fades into the background once you're actually involved in deals, because you don't care what, like the growth in wages is nationwide. You care about the growth in the neighborhood of your property. You don't care about, like interest rates or vacancy rates going all over the country. You care about, the lead pipes that are under your property that you didn't find out about, or something like that, right? So I think it's really important that we have these speakers who aren't coaches. So they're gonna. This is a little bit of a cynical way to put it. They're going to get just as bored as you in the audience will if they're just going over the same, gory details. And so I find every single session, you start off by telling people what a beginner would be able to handle and understand. And then by the end, we do get into the weeds enough where, like you're still walking away. It's like, oh yeah, that's the solution to my problem. And that's why I love these presentations so much, and why I can honestly support the summits as a whole. What do you got to say, Jason?
So even if the presentations don't go into the weeds enough, or you're more advanced, those people on the other side of the recording are people too, and you can access them. You can get in contact with them if you have questions that are outside the presentation, and that's something that's critical too. I mean, and Angel has helped set up and arrange meetings between all sorts of people, because I mean that's what she does. And so if you have a question that's not answered in the presentation, you can reach out to us and we'll get you the information you need.
I love it. I love it. And, I think I'm living proof that you can ask fastball questions. Okay. You can ask hard questions, and like even the ones where it's going a little bit beyond what I think some people would say is polite, because that's what holds me back in general from, asking something. It's like, yeah, I'm being told this, but there's just one piece of the puzzle that doesn't add up. All of your guests, they can think on their feet, or else they wouldn't be invited. They've actually got the experience. So if you ask them something like that, the chances that they haven't already thought of that are minuscule. So that's why I think it's important to join the live session. And of course, if you have the VIP subscription, you can actually prepare for the different speakers and have those different questions all prepared. But we're already over time. We're going to try and keep these to 45 minutes going ahead. I really appreciate the fact that everybody joined us today. And we're here every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So make sure that you tune in. We're on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. It's it's really quite something. But thanks for all this again today, guys. Got any parting words before I pull the plug here?
Yeah, we'd love to see you at the summit.
See ya.
Do it. All right. See you, everybody.